Hello, my chicklets. Thank you for stopping by. Today we are going to be reading Coin Toss. This one is part of the Between Black and White series. It is actually the second part, but it kind of stands on its own, so I don't think we necessarily need to read the first part in order for this one to make sense. This one, however, is a little dark, so make sure you check those content warnings in the description. That being said, let's go ahead and jump into Coin Toss. Deceit threw a mug against the wall. Anxiety was a traitor. He had left him and Remus back. He had gone to the other side. He had fought his way up into Thomas's consciousness. Deceit had been tired. He had seen him slip. He hadn't had to force himself to look unaffected when morality had come and said that anxiety should be allowed to appear to Thomas, that anxiety should be included in their group. Deceit had been tired. He had listened. He had heard the words morality said. He had also heard his own answer, his own agreement to the proposal. He watched later that day how anxiety took his favorite pillow from their basement into his room. It was the only thing he had had downstairs anymore, and now even that little part of him had been gone. Deceit had lost him. He had lost his little one to the consciousness. Remus had just giggled maniacally when he found out, and soon was gone into the imagination. Deceit didn't care. If he hurt himself or not, it was of no importance. They were all imaginary anyway. He picked up the shards of the broken mug. It was an ugly yellow. The edge was sharp, and he let his finger run over it. It drew blood. He stared at the red line running over his human skin, a drop forming at his wrist and falling slowly to the floor. His scales hurt. They started growing on his left hand too now. They had grown so much over the past few months. So much hiding, so much lies, so little recognition. Thomas didn't want him. Morality couldn't want him. Anxiety had chosen the others over him. Deceit was tired. He walked to the kitchen. He was shivering. His layers by far not enough to warm him anymore. But there was no energy in him left to summon any clothes. But his legs still carried him, those traitorous things, and he decided he could as well drown himself. It didn't matter after all. The wine was spilled next to the glass. Not all of it. Enough to give him a soft buzz landed inside of it. It didn't give him a warm feeling, only the sensation of slipping control, more muted feelings. But his eyes began to overfill. Tears ran down his face, and Deceit sank to the floor. He abandoned the glass and drank from the bottle itself. He hadn't even tried to fight for anxiety to stay. He hadn't tried to console Remus. He didn't ask morality for extending his good graces to himself and Remus as well. He had let Roman and Logan fight for themselves, for Thomas without a break. They didn't talk to him. They didn't look at him. They didn't seem to remember him anymore. Not how he read to Logan, how he calmed, how he dealt with his traumas and his frustrations. A gruesome sob rippled through his chest. Roman didn't have a reason to trust him. He hadn't done anything for the child, hadn't praised him or watched him create as a child, as he had done with Remus. He hadn't been there for the other half. No, just for the other creativity. For the ego, he had fought him when he wanted to out himself to a friend. He had tried with all his might to stop him only to fail. And it turned out fine. It had been hard, but so much better than before. And almost Deceit had been the reason for it to never happen again. Almost he would have caused Thomas to live in misery and pain and shame for so much longer than he had to. Roman was a hero. He didn't need him. Logan could calm himself now. He could talk with Patton, and he would be able to deal with Virgil and even Remus. Logan was their backbone. He didn't need him. Virgil had left. He was enough of a protector and observer for all of them. Virgil wasn't paranoia anymore. He didn't need him. Patton never needed him in the first place, but Janus had always needed him. Remus was still a thing. Janus sniffed his nose and wiped the snot out of his face. He didn't need to think about Remus. Remus and Patton didn't like each other. They would clash, and Patton would never agree to just let him in. He couldn't. They were both too similar. cared too much about their work and too little about themselves. Janus needed to stay for Remus. The bottle of wine slipped out of his grip. It shattered, and Janus flinched and pressed his legs against his chest protectively. More shards next to the one mug Virgil had made him when they were children. Really, how much help could he be to Remus? He had just scared himself with a bottle of wine. How would he be able to help the one side who lived with nightmares that would give any known gore writer in history a heart attack? No, Janus was useless. Janus was hopeless. He was no hero, no backbone, never grew out of paranoia, no heart, never the heart, and no fighter like his trash son. And Janus was tired, but he wasn't cruel either. At least, he didn't want to be. Maybe he still was, but there was no way he could change that anymore. He wanted to stop existing, but he needed Thomas to still be able to lie. He couldn't duck out, but maybe he could die otherwise. Maybe his figure could just disappear since Thomas had never known him in the first place. He didn't want to leave a big mess. He had thought about it often in the past. With every day away from Patton, every day Virgil slipped out of his reach, every day Remus got worse and worse. He had built up his plan more and more. He wouldn't say goodbye, whatever for. He never answered their questions before why start in death. He would go alone, and he would go in his sleep, and drunk. There were worse ways to go, he mused, and slowly unfurled from his position on the floor. More cuts were littered over his thigh, his hand bleeding from the new shards on the floor. He winced, but got up. It didn't matter, really. Nothing mattered. The bathroom, the sleeping pills were in the cabinet. He took them out with shaking hands, not from fear or remorse, but from the inebriated fuzz in his mind. There were so many white pills. They had to be enough. Preservation! Oh, fuck you. It didn't matter. Nothing mattered. He didn't need him. No, more important, Thomas didn't need him. He'd do it. His hand didn't move. With a curse, he took the obelisk out of his pants pocket and stared it down. Now or tomorrow. That much he could do. Now or tomorrow. Head or tail. One coin toss. And he tossed. Thank you all for listening. That one was a little on the dark side, but I personally think that the entire series is really good and you definitely should go read it. I hope you enjoyed it nonetheless, and I hope you have a wonderful day.